Okay, good morning, everybody. It is October 18th, and how are we all doing today? Okay, we got some comments early on. Ponythroat says he doesn't know the song. It sounds like a cover of something. Actually ties into the title of the stream. Tony Gilbert says, hello, I'm on my pre-birthday celebrations. I'll join the live. Well, happy pre-birthday to you, sir. It's Larsen Live, October 18th, 2025. We opened up with one of the incidental themes from the 1984 Dune movie by Toto. Toto, of course, likes to bless the rains down in Africa, but just shouldn't bless the rains on Arrakis because it's not good. Making it rain artificially makes everything a hell of a lot worse. But yeah, the title of the stream is The Butlerian Jihad, and I think we should just get right to it. Because I really want a Butlerian Jihad right now. Normally, we would start off with more political things, but I guess this is sort of politically related. Tony Gilbert says he fucking knew it. I'm glad somebody knew it. Yeah, it wasn't like the main theme of, when everybody thinks of the 1984 Dune, they think of the music that played when Paul tamed Shai Hulud. It's not that one. But it's another incidental piece. I don't want to go with the old cliche. Also, having watched both of the Denis Villeneuve Dune movies on the plane back from South Africa, I was a bit disappointed to hear that Timothée Chalamet does not, in fact, howl "Father, the Sleeper has awakened" in the second Dune movie. I was very disappointed. Ian Kempster says Dune is the greatest story ever written. Well, yes, the Frank Herbert Dunes, not those shit heaps Brian Herbert wrote and Kevin Anderson. Okay. Tony Gilbert says 35. He turns 35 tomorrow. Congratulations, sir. I'm 34 myself. Okay. Tony Gilbert says that music, I presume he's referring to the Dune remake music, will put you to sleep. His girlfriend listens to it to fall asleep. I mean, there's certainly worse things you could listen to fall asleep. Ian Kempster says the books are amazing, the Dune books. Yes, they are. I own all 6 of the Frank Herbert Dunes. I haven't read all of them. I read the first 4, and I know I got to get back into it at some point. And also, I was like very, very, very sick when I read the 3rd and 4th. So I don't even really remember those that much. I should probably just read them all from the beginning again. I have a pretty good grasp of what happens in the first 2. And yeah, I was in a... Yeah, so when I read Children of Dune and, God Emperor of Dune, the 3rd and 4th books, I was recovering from my broken foot, which I broke, back in 2016. So basically, since my body was trying to repair my broken foot, the rest of my immune system basically shut down. So I was very sick. I had a pretty severe bronchitis while I also had a broken foot. So I was on a very potent cocktail of opioids, heavy prescription painkillers, and also heavy cough medicine. So I did read Dune 3 and 4. I remember very little of them. Tony Gilbert says, there's a book series I've been trying to find for years, but I can't find it. I assume he's not referring to Dune. Ian Kempster says, I broke my foot in an epic ninja battle, right? No, it was a car crash, actually. Very early on in my internet endeavors, I mentioned it. Years and years ago, I wrote an article about it. That was back when I was writing for ROK. Tony Gilbert refers to some book series about poor people living underground on Mars. Did they do a novelization of Total Recall? Guess not. Okay. Yeah, I wish I broke my foot in an epic ninja battle. My friend in middle school got his foot broken in a fist fight. He basically got the piece of shit kid he fought with stomped on his foot and broke it. And yeah, that kid ended up like becoming a drug addict loser. So yeah. Hey, Tony Gilbert says breaking a toe fucking hurts. You think that hurts? Try having all 5 of your phalanges like dislocated and knocked right off the connective tissue there. Tony Gilbert says they did do a Total Recall book, but it's not Total Recall. Well, yes, I know that the story Total Recall was originally a Philip K. Dick book. Anyway, going back in the comments, Ponythroat says, most people heard that lyric as I left my brains down in Africa. Well, I'm sure some brains are occasionally eaten there. Ian Kempster says, I was disappointed in the first Dune movie. Yeah, like the thing about the 2 Dune movies is, like, I would say that just in a more, like, in a textbook sense, the Villeneuve one's probably more competent than the David Lynch one. But I think the David Lynch one is much more ambitious, and it really goes for it. Like, David Lynch, you can see he wanted to... They expected the 84 Dune movie to be like Star Wars, which is pretty funny when they literally have, like, children's, like, coloring books and stuff for the original Dune movie. It's like, yeah, you can color in Baron Harkonnen's giant suppurating AIDS sores. But yeah, like David Lynch, he clearly didn't want to just do Star Wars. He wanted to make like this is gonna be his, like, Cleopatra. This is gonna be his Ben-Hur, like this big sprawling epic. And he didn't quite pull it off, but by God, he tried, and I respect that. Hey. Tony Gilbert says that's exactly what happened. Our industry whipped their ass. Now they rule the cars, man. Hey. Tony Gilbert says it's sad what happened to the American factory. We used to rule the world and make everything like a sign you see every day. Said Trenton makes the world takes. Oh, yeah, I'm well familiar with that sign. That used to be the case, and now it's not. Ponythroat says Philip K. Dick and his stupid book names. Total Recall's original story was We Can Remember It For You Wholesale. And let's not forget Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which became Blade Runner. Anyway, in case you were wondering, Tony Gilbert, why the meme in my meme reel, the man who looks like a Ninja Turtle, it's making fun of, steroid physiques. Like, I don't know what they have in the steroids nowadays, but, I don't know, people get, like, they get that, like, Palumbo gut, like the big steroid belly, and, yeah, it makes you look like a Ninja Turtle. It's not a good physique. Now, I don't know what happened, in between, like, the 70s and 80s and now. I mean, say what you will about, like, Schwarzenegger, Mike Menzer, Serge Nubret, guys like that. They took a lot of steroids, but they look good. Like, they had, like, lean and trim physiques, like, flat stomachs. They didn't have those big, like, roid guts. Like, I don't know what the difference is between the roids they had back in the day and the roids they have now. Can we go back to, like, the 70s roids? Because I don't know, it seems to me that, like, the 70s roids are safer, if you'll pardon the expression, than the modern roids. Tony Gilbert says the OG Ben-Hur is brutal. Like, 10 people died making that movie, bro. Well, yeah, the silent Ben-Hur, like the Ramon Navarro one, yes. Not the Charlton Heston one. But yeah, like, people legitimately did die making the silent Ben-Hur. Ponythroat and Narahari Kamath clarified, trends alone. You can have a big muscle gut like E. Honda. You can also die at the age of 40. Narahari Kamath says they take growth hormones. I know there's also, like, insulin disruptors and things. Okay, Tony Gilbert says the companies make less potent stuff. All the old chemicals are banned. They do way too much PED nowadays. Look at guys like Lee Priest, Kevin Levrone, etc. They use basic minimal doses. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not super knowledgeable in, competitive bodybuilding. But I know that, like the OG, the Silver Age bodybuilders, Menzer, Schwarzenegger, Ferrigno, like, they still look good. Even in their dotage. Like, their bodies aren't just, like, falling apart underneath them like uh, like the guys in like the 90s, 2000s, and nowadays. Hey, who's that German bodybuilder whose like liver basically like crumbled into dust while it was still inside of him? That was like the late 90s. I forget his name, but it wasn't Rolf Moeller. It was Rolf Moeller still alive. Yes, Rolf Moeller, the dime store Schwarzenegger. I forget the guy's name. Hey, Tony Gilbert clarifies that there were certain meds that were pulled in the 90s. I mean, steroids were basically legal in this country with prescription until like 1990. If you read the original book, American Psycho, Patrick and his friends take steroids. Ponythroat also says, don't forget synthol. Makes your muscles bigger by injecting them with cement. Yeah, synthol is horrifying. Anyway, it's really cool that we've talked almost 20 minutes. I haven't even gotten to the title story yet. But yeah, let's just get right to it. Okay, so I am calling for a Butlerian Jihad because AI is showing us man-made horrors beyond our comprehension. Sam Altman, the maker of ChatGPT, is making a proud new announcement. Okay? And I quote, by the way, Sam Altman has a little like anime boy avatar, which I don't think is what he looks like. I'm probably confusing Sam Altman with Sam Bankman-Fried. Sam Bankman-Fried looks like a bridge troll. Sam Altman presumably looks slightly more normal, but not too much. Yeah, so Sam Altman says, we have made ChatGPT restricted to make sure we were being careful with mental health issues. This made it less useful and enjoyable to people who did not have health problems. We've been able to mitigate the health issues and have new tools. We're going to relax restrictions. In a few weeks, this was on the 14th, so a few days ago, we plan to put out a new version of ChatGPT that allows people to have a personality that behaves more like what people liked about 4.0. If you want your ChatGPT to respond in a human-like way, or act like a friend, ChatGPT should do it. Well, I mean, to be fair, as I said a few weeks ago, 50% of the internet is bots. So, statistically speaking, at least 3 of you people in the chat now are chat robots I'm talking to. I'll let you decide which one's which. Anyway, Altman goes on. In December, we will roll out age gating more fully. As part of our treat adult users like adult principle, we will allow even more, like erotica for verified adults. Yes, ChatGPT will soon produce personalized porno. And he's proud of this. Now, he did say erotica, so I'm going to presume that it's going to be first text-based erotica for the ladies, because we got to get those masturbating Minotaur books that the kids love so much nowadays. And then pretty soon it's going to be just visual porn. Now bear in mind that if you'll recall, the VHS Betamax conflict was to a large degree settled with the fact that the porno industry settled on VHS. So it looks like ChatGPT is here to stay. Okay, let's see. Looking at some comments here. Still talking about, the roids. Tony Gilbert knows who I'm talking about. That bodybuilder who, died. Not the Liver King Pony Throat. This was back in the 90s. Let me look up this guy. I want to say his name was Andreas something or other. Give me 1 second to look this up. You can talk amongst yourselves whilst I do this. Okay, let's see. So I looked up bodybuilder liver death. I just got a bunch of things about the Liver King. It's not him. It's not the Liver King, YouTube. Okay, it's not Dallas McCarver. He's another bodybuilder who's like body collapsed. His like liver just died. But no, there's a very specific. He was a German guy. I remember seeing a picture of him. He had like a backwards hat. He like literally his liver just like crumbled to dust while he was still alive, and then he obviously died shortly thereafter. I guess I'll just look this up on the Googles. Andreas Munzer, that's it. Yes, I knew it was a German guy. Okay, he was Austrian technical. Okay, so let's say after months of stomach pain, he went to the hospital, 96. His liver and kidneys basically like crumbled to dust whilst he was alive. That's not great. Okay, Tony Gilbert then clarifies that in some states it was up to 1992 you could legally get roids. Okay, Tony Gilbert says, referring to my meme reel, the Richard Scarry meme. Yeah, Richard Scarry's a pretty cool guy. Ian Kempster says these people haven't seen Terminator and it shows, referring to the AI. Okay, Tony Gilbert also likes my naked old man at the gym thing. That's very true if you've ever been to a gym, ever. Okay, so Tony Gilbert says, same thing with DVD and Blu-ray. Porn picked DVD, so they won. Okay, state by state. Andreas Munzer, yep. Ian Kempster says, they're all a bunch of squareheads. But yes, ChatGPT is going to produce personalized porno. Probably first text-based, just like, video games used to be text-based, and now they're not. Thought says it can perform Linkara like ERP with you. Well, yes, clearly we need to have like necrophile Muppet gangbangs or whatever Linkara was into. Narahari Kamas says AI is overhyped. I mean, is AI gonna like take, most people's jobs? No, but if AI can produce, sufficient enough erotica, I think it'll take lady porn jobs, if nothing else. I should point out this is literally something from the book 1984 where they had machines that could just write, slop books to placate the people. So says Edward L. Hamilton on Twitter. Get every high school and college student hooked on a product and then convert it into an infinity porn engine. I mean, he is right about the young whippersnappers, because I'd say most of my students don't write their crap. They use AI. I mean, sometimes it's blazingly obvious and I give them zeros. But sometimes you can't tell. Sometimes they change it just enough. And, it's like, your writing has become really good all of a sudden. But, you can't prove it. So what can I do? But I should read the rest of the tweet. Yes, Mr. Hamilton goes on to continue. This is the most evil business model anybody has ever come up with since the transatlantic slave trade. I think you might have a point there. And of course, there's other slave trades in general. First reply, actually, the Arab slave trade would like a word. How about slave trading in general is bad? I mean, to be fair, nobody's dying per se like the slave trade, but on the other hand, people's souls will be dying. There is something very unseemly about just infinity AI porn. I think there was an article on Cracked a long time ago where it was like if they had the hologram machine from the holodeck from Star Trek, like the second they invented that, you would just have like millions of men just plugging in and just dying, starving to death in their holodecks as they masturbate themselves into a coma and then die. I think we're about there. I mean, we are furiously like masturbating ourselves to death, and yeah, I'm kind of all for the Butlerian Jihad at this point. I should also point out that the Butlerian Jihad was very conceptually different when Frank Herbert was writing than when Brian Herbert was writing. Frank Herbert said that the Butlerian Jihad was like sort of like a neo-Luddite rebellion. People destroyed the machines because they were putting people out of work. They were... I don't know if Frank Herbert predicted like AI porn and like chatbots that convincing teenagers to commit suicide. I mean, he was a very smart man. I think he had a vague idea something like that was going to happen. I mean, that's exactly what did happen. So that's Frank Herbert's idea of the Butlerian Jihad. It was sort of like a Ted Kaczynski thing taken to its logical conclusion. Brian and Kevin, on the other hand, made up some stupid whack-ass like Terminator robot war thing because Brian Herbert's a hack. Now, Ian, you're a big Dune guy. Like, I know Frank Herbert wanted to write 7 Dune books. He wrote 6 before he died. Did Brian Herbert and Kevin Anderson actually finish the saga, or did they just make a million spin-offs that sucked? Tony Gilbert says an attorney got busted using AI to do his work. We're all like, what the fuck, bro? A general uses AI to do his work. That came out just the other day. Okay, Ponythroat and Tony Gilbert then argue about the holodeck. It's not that the holodeck is stupid. It's just that if it did exist, I think it would be exactly like what we have now. Just every guy in the Star Trek universe would immediately use the holodeck to just create like virtual reality porn for themselves. And then you would find the millions and millions of men, like just desiccated corpses of men with their hands down their pants in the holodeck. And when I say hands in the pants, I mean there would be some kind of like mechanical suction machine like whacking them off for all eternity. Narahari Kamath says the first casualty is always art. When computers become commercially available, art was first to be hit with manual artists protesting that their hard work is being replaced by computer apps. Yeah. Ian Kempster says the jihad was when we enslaved each other with machines, and that started the rebellion. I see. Yeah, if I recall correctly, they don't really go into... They only kind of hint here and there at what the Butlerian Jihad was in the canon Dune works. I know there's also that Encyclopedia of Dune, which I have not read. Anyway, let's see what else is going on. Oh, speaking of terrible, terrible modern society, guess we're kind of doing things a bit out of order today. Let's see. In Florida, something went a bit viral. POV spending a day at the beach in Florida 2025. There are advertisement barges nowadays. There's just big barges with big flat screens on them. They just sail back and forth showing ads. $3 coffee, handcrafted by you at Wawa. I did not know that Wawa had a presence in Florida. But, yeah, I don't like advertising boats. I don't like advertising planes either. I mean, I know Greenpeace does, like, they sink, like, the whaling boats and stuff. Maybe we should start sinking these boats instead. Like, God forbid you have a nice day at the beach and, not get bombarded with advertisements and boat billboards. This is a bad idea and you should feel bad. It's going to be like that patent where they're going to play ads on TV and you can't watch the show unless you say McDonald's or do the little, like, wagey shuffle or whatever. I mean, I'm pretty much against advertising in general. But this is, yeah, I have a few ideas for this. Like, sea mines would be good. Okay, Ian Kemper says, remember the Orange Catholic Bible. Tony Gilbert says, Sheets is going down the coast now. Birmingham's a shithole. Wawa's all the way down to Florida. Ian Kemper says, bring back the U-boats. I mean, would you even need to do... I don't even think you need submarines. Just a few, like... Just a few sea mines would be good. Unfortunately, a boat is not as delicate as a plane. So, you can disable a plane with just, like a few dollars worth of, like, metal scrap in the right place. A boat, not so much. Tony Gilbert says, I stopped going to the beach when they banned smoking on the boardwalk. That just doesn't make sense. I mean, you're outside. Why can you not smoke? Yeah, just gotta get some mines. Yeah, that'd be good. Okay, let's see. Speaking of failures in American policy, we got a few of those. First of all, let's go to Israel by way of America. Okay, the current and former ambassadors to Israel, Mike Huckabee and David Friedman, play a rendition of Sweet Home Alabama in Israel titled Sweet Home Jerusalem. The lyrics were changed, and this is absolute ass. Okay, first of all, Mike Huckabee is not a good guitar player. I mean, I'm not the greatest guitar player in the world myself. It's probably the weakest, well, the second weakest of the instruments I own. Like, I can barely play a damn thing on the violin. Yeah, it's guitar's definitely a solid number 4 on my list of musical talents. But yeah, this is not a good rendition. And I think I realize why. It's because Mike Huckabee has a bass guitar and he's trying to play the melody part of Sweet Home Alabama. It doesn't sound good. Like, this is just ass. And that's even ignoring the just cringe evangelical horseshit that they're doing here. I don't... Seriously, what is this, like, boomer nonsense where really lame American ambassadors go and play crappy, house guitar in nightclubs? Anthony Blinken plays Rockin' in the Free World in Kiev. Or Kiev, however they pronounce it nowadays. Then there's this crap. And I think it goes without saying that Huckabee and Friedman changed the lyrics to push for not only Israel, but greater Israel. taking more land than they have already. Of Twitter comment under it, the South should rise again in response to this abomination. Yeah. Yeah, unlike AI, this is not a man-made horror beyond our comprehension. Well, it is a man-made horror, but it's not AI-made. This is all real. I genuinely have a question about guys like this. Do they actually like America? I don't see why they don't just renounce their citizenship and get Israeli citizenship. And I have nothing against Israeli people either. I mean, I don't even think, just looking at the crowd, I don't think they even like this all that much. This is embarrassing. Can we not do better as a country than just not sending fat old boomers to play crappy guitar? It sucks. And, like, I guess I kind of understand why Mike Huckabee would be doing this, because Mike Huckabee is some evangelical lunatic who thinks that the modern state of Israel has to exist to bring about the second coming. But can we keep these people out of government and away from the levers of power? I mean, hey, Tony Gilbert and Pony Throat talk about planes versus helicopters, which are both pretty delicate, but helicopters are probably more delicate. But yes, like I was saying, it's pretty easy to sabotage a plane. It's much harder to sabotage a boat. Boats are much hardier than planes. Okay, he then complains about ruining Leonard Skinner. Tony Gilbert says, I can't play boat instruments, I break the strings, LOL. Yeah, I've noticed that the violin I have, like, there's always a couple of strings that they get really, like, tight and then they break and I have to buy new strings. I mean, I did buy it at a flea market for like $5, so I don't know, is the violin just not good or am I doing something wrong? I don't know. I just noticed that my guitar isn't like that. Tony Thor says, isn't Greater Israel also known as the USA? Well, I mean, kind of, but Greater Israel is a, I don't know, it's a, I guess, conspiracy theory where not only do Israelis have Israel, some say that it should go from, like, the Mediterranean to the Euphrates. I don't know how serious this is about trying to get that, but I'm sure some people want it at the very least. Tony Gilbert says, why we haven't taken back the Temple Mount is beside me. That's a whole different can of worms there. I mean, partially, like, I think we're not taking back the Temple Mount because if we did, you know, the Mike Huckabees and Lindsey Grahams of the world would just furiously start jacking off if we did that. Ian Kempster says, Palestine should be grateful for Israel. They'd be fighting each other if Israel wasn't there. Yes, little known fact. Even the other Arab countries don't like Palestinians. Like, I think they actually tried to get Egypt to take some refugees, and they were like, absolutely not. Robert Diaz says, Steven Seagal versus Mike Huckabee in a guitar battle for the ages. I mean, having heard both of them play, I think Huckabee's the better player, you know, not... The problem with Mike Huckabee is that he seems to be able to play the bass okay, it's just he doesn't seem to understand that you can't play the melody part on a bass. Tony Gilbert says, I was speaking of the Velvet Bulldozer Albert King, referring to Steven Seagal having one of his guitars. I did not know that. Pony Throat asks about the Hosha bunkers. Oh, they're still there, sir. I've never been to Albania, but I've read articles and I've seen pictures. There are literally 700,000 little shitty bunkers just sticking out of the ground in Albania. They're just like little urinals that like stick out. Point Thought says, I'm not a fan of Israel, but to say Palestine is blameless is stupid. Yeah, it's kind of my theory. I've always said, why don't we just leave them alone, let them kill each other? I honestly could not care less what happens. But no, we have these, young earth dispensationalist weirdos running government, and it's not good. But not to be outdone by foreign policy, domestic policy in America is pretty crappy as well. Two things that are vaguely related. But, actually, let's do this. Okay, so the New York City mayoral election is still going on. Zoran Mamdani says he wants to make buses free. And why does he want to make buses free? Because he thinks this will create a safer work environment. Because New York City has a very big problem with, dead-eyed, brappy derelicts beating the shit out of bus drivers. And clearly the solution here is to make buses free because, if the brappy freaks out and goes to a violent rage over paying $2.50 for a bus fee, clearly reducing the bus fee will make him just calm down and just be a wonderful, productive citizen of the country. He surely won't find any other reason to go into a violent rage. He won't attack somebody on the bus for, scuffing his shoe or spilling a drop of water on him or, because the invisible leprechaun on his shoulder told him to kill somebody. I would ask what kind of an ivory tower jackoff would say this, but Zoran Mamdani is literally an ivory tower, Nepo baby, so he has literally probably never had to deal with some screaming derelict sitting next to him, which is, good for him, but the rest of us do have to deal with this crap. Okay, Tony Gilbert says he stayed in a bunker hotel in Albania. He says, I recently started playing the ukulele. You should try it, man. One of my long-term projects that I want to work on is I want to make, cigar box guitars, which are basically ukuleles. And, so I'll probably get to it at some point. Pony Throat says, if the end times happen, I'll never forgive Israel for making the fundies right. Yeah, that's clearly the worst thing that would happen. Tony Gilbert and Nara Hari Kamath say that Mamdani is going to ruin New York. Yeah, probably. I am kind of torn on this because, on the one hand, I don't want New York to be a shithole because I live, within an hour's drive of New York. And I don't want, the hordes of derelicts coming to where I live. On the other hand, I think we can all agree that New York was the most culturally vibrant back when it was a crime-ridden shithole. 1970s, John Lindsay, New York, gave us, Taxi Driver, The Warriors, The King of Comedy, Escape from New York, Death Wish, etc., etc. So a very small part of me kind of wishes that would come back. Okay, Robert Diaz says Mamdani is an idiot. He'll run his tax base out under a year if he's the mayor of New York. That literally did happen in the 70s. And New York was on the verge of bankruptcy for the better part of 30 years until Giuliani started cleaning things up. Hey, Pony Throat says if the buses had been free, Uncle Ben would still be alive. Tony Gilbert says, did you see they're making Big Trouble in Little China too? Yeah, I did hear about that. I haven't heard any progress on the issue, but I did hear once they were making that. Okay. There's something I really dislike about this. This is there's a specific type of like hard left winger who's like, well, we can reduce crime if we just redefine what crime is. So, assault isn't a crime, and you can shoplift for $1,000. So there's no more crime. Should. Yeah, that. Like, I despise that attitude. Like, I consider myself, in some ways, I do consider myself, fairly left-leaning. Like, I believe, people should have health care and, like, education and all that stuff. And I support, freedom of speech and, I think gay people should be allowed to get married and all that stuff. But when you get to stuff like this, that's where I have to draw a line. Yeah, well, it's just screaming derelicts, lighting people on fire is just part of living in the city. What are you gonna do? Boing. What is going on with my audience? It went from like 10 to 6, like in a couple of seconds. Toto says they're making Spaceballs 2 now. The fact that it's not titled Spaceballs: The Search for More Money, that upsets me. Tony Gilbert says, I saw that the guy from Star Trek Voyager came back. He saw him pick combing the desert. And also got the Spaceballs t-shirt. We gotta get the coloring book and the flamethrower too. Robert Diaz says Mamdani's other issue is that he wants to freeze rent but not freeze property taxes. He took econ from the corpse of Karl Marx. Yeah, seems like it. And you want to take econ from a guy who literally never worked a real job in his life. And no, being a journalist is not a real job. Ponythroat says, if we redefine crime, there will be no more crime. It's like me as an 8-year-old foal turning the clock forward to make time go faster. Yeah, they tried that, like, that shoplifting. You can basically shoplift legally up to $1,000 in San Francisco. And how's that working out? I mean, in general, I'm pretty much a live and let live guy. I feel that, if it doesn't hurt other people, you could do whatever you want. The problem is, these people are like, these people do hurt other people, and we should let them do what they want anyway. Mamdani sucks. He sucks. He sucks. Speaking of people who think like Zoran Mamdani, strange doings are transpiring in the schools. So basically, a big thing going on in the schools is this prevention of the school-to-prison pipeline. Sorry. This is the same idea. It's like, if we don't punish the kids, they'll just magically learn how to behave themselves. Because to punish them, that would put them on the path to prison. Of course, the fact that they commit major felonies in school, that might also be part of the reason why they're going to the school-to-prison pipeline. Yes, there were a couple of incidents that happened in the schools. In Covington, Kentucky, a group of, delightful young whippersnappers, as the New York Post would probably put it, and we'll get to that in a second, surround and beat up 2 girls outside the school. This has gone viral, and apparently it is claimed that no charges have been pressed against any of them. So, we got to prevent that school-to-prison pipeline, so we're just going to let these kids commit major felonies until they end up murdering somebody. And then we not disciplined not hard enough. We got to not discipline even harder. Yeah, as you can tell, I'm not a big fan of restorative justice. Okay, Ian Kempster says, so many businesses close in blue states. Case in point, Chicago. Maybe have mandatory conscription. I don't know about that. I mean, do we want the army to be filled with just screaming, violent, low IQ derelicts? Tony Gilbert says that's fucked. And it was looked like a bunch of boys and girls beating up these 2 girls. It's, yeah, really bad situation. Yeah, so some people say that in 2014, Obama basically threatened to absolutely drop the hammer on any school that called the police on, you know, juvenile Brappies. His admin threatened to not only force the DOE to withdraw funding from any school that had kids being apprehended by police, in particular disproportionate amounts of black kids being apprehended by police, but also file Title IV and VI suits against them. I mean, just this makes everybody suffer, including the minority populations that are in that prison pipeline, because the kids who want to learn, they can't learn because some screaming derelict comes into the room and just starts like throwing chairs around all day, every day. Tony Gilbert says, it worked in Nam, man, just saying. Well, that's the thing. It didn't work in Vietnam. What was the end result of Vietnam? Did we win? No, we didn't. The McNamara project was a dismal failure. I mean, unless you consider a success that they just sent a bunch of tards over to Vietnam and got killed. I mean, if you strictly just want to get rid of the tard population, I guess it worked. But, as harsh and angry as I am, I do have some compassion. Tony Gilbert says we need to restart the asylums. Reagan fucked us when he closed them. Yeah, it sure did. Pointer says Vietnam W. Yes, sniping and booby-trapping Mongoloids gets worked out in their favor. So yeah, speaking of another story that happened in the schools. Let's see what happened here. There was an alternative school in Massachusetts where a school staff member died. Meadow Ridge Academy in Massachusetts. I mean, from its name, I would almost assume this is some kind of feral Brappy school that is basically just one step away from a juvenile detention center. Sorry, I'm speaking slowly because I'm trying to read this article here. Let's see. 53-year-old lady was struck in the chest by a 14-year-old student during an incident inside a dormitory. A student kicked Amy Morell in the chest, and she collapsed, and they performed CPR, and she died. I mean, I don't know. I mean, when I first read the headline, I assume this is just some full-on King Leonidas kick to the Persian ambassador, but I guess not. I mean, maybe it's there's always that rumor that if you time a hit to the chest just right, you can stop the heart. Maybe it was a 1 in a million shot. I don't know. But yeah, this is bad. I mean, I question how big this person was who kicked her. Maybe this person was Leonidas-sized. Seems like a very petite, middle-aged lady. Probably can't take a good kick to the chest. I mean, I used to work at a feral Brappy school, and I mean, there's a couple of kids I would have liked to kick in the chest. But that's neither here nor there. Ian Kempster says they didn't reach their political goal. Who, us or Vietnam? Because, I mean, there's a case to be made that neither side really got what they wanted out of that. Okay, Alpha Marides. Oh, Ian Kempster also says blame the French for Vietnam. I mean, yeah, they did kind of drag us into that. Hey, Alfred says, how is the legalization of shoplifting working out? Californians were so pissed off, they not only made repeated theft a felony, they also rejected a ban on forced prison labor. I mean, I'm okay with prison labor as long as it's optional and they're paid like a fair wage. Because I know that even now, like with prison labor being grossly underpaid, a lot of prisoners will actually fight to get into those jobs just because it's something to do and they can get out of the cell for once in a while. I mean, Honeythroat says he did the Kill Bill 5-point exploding heart technique with his toes. Yeah, seems like it. And in a similar kind of story, the New York Post, the euphemism machine is working hard. A pipe-wielding screwball has been accused of assault spree, and he's been held on bail a week after he was freed. So a dead-eyed sociopathic derelict has been bashing people with a pipe. He was set free for a week, and he went out and he hit some more people with a pipe. A pipe-wielding screwball. Like, I'm sorry, who comes up with these euphemisms? Oh, those lunchtime rowdies, the pipe-wielding screwballs, those delightful scamps. I guess like calling them screaming derelicts is not an option. Somebody at the New York Post has to be trolling here, coming up with these euphemisms, because they cannot be like serious with this. God, I hate pipe-wielding screwballs so much it's unreal. Yes. Ponythroat says, all prison systems in which labor is conducted for less than the outside will have people being falsely in prison for the bottom line. Well, I think you could modify that. I mean, first of all, we have like literal homeless people committing petty crimes just so they can get out of the winter. Secondly, I think if you held like the prison money like in a trust that they couldn't use until they got out, maybe that would work. Of course, the problem is that prison kind of only works if the people going into prison have some sense of shame and some minimum level of intellect, and a lot of the people going into prison don't. Ponythroat says he thought he was fighting the Mad Gear Gang. What a coincidence. I was thinking the other day about how, Streets of Rage, Final Fight, Double Dragon, River City Ransom, all those games, greatly impacted my sense of morality as a child. And, there's still a part of me. I had a realization, just kind of idly thinking the other day. There's still a part of me that thinks the Brappy situation could be solved if we just gave a bunch of martial arts masters lead pipes and just had them hit people until the problem went away. Yeah, just get a bunch of like mullet-wearing, martial arts masters wearing like, Zubows and spandex and just have them like hit people with lead pipes until the problem's solved. Robert Diaz says he wanted people to pipe down. Yeah, probably. Alpha Mrigi says, I saved the city, I saved the girl, I couldn't save myself. Yes, Cody did live a life of sadness and pain, didn't he? And I liked Final Fight Streetwise on PS2. I don't care what anybody says. Also in American policies. And let's see what's going on in the greater scheme. America's international relations. America is spotting Argentina some money. $40 billion to bail out the Argentinian government. Which is wonderful. It's kind of funny that Tony Gilbert made fun of the meme I had about the Dole and Chiquita banana people. And obviously America did a lot of fuckery in Latin America. But at the same time, we've also bailed out, we're bailing out Argentina twice. We've bailed out Mexico twice. So, it's a mixed bag. Pony Thought says, Captain Commando was a better game than Final Fight. In some ways, yes, I would agree. Yeah, Captain Commando is I really do love when Japan kind of does these interpretations of like American 1930s pulp sci-fi, which Captain Commando very much is. Also like Captain Falcon is sort of the epitome of that. Ponythroat says, didn't Argentina elect a libertarian? This is the expected result. Yeah, pretty much. Not only that, speaking of America just giving people money, Lesotho is having some problems. I know, it's shocking. But yes, okay, the USA has given millions in dollars of aid from the United States to help Lesotho, which had the world's second highest rate of HIV infection. Trump has signed an executive order freezing foreign aid, and people are upset. So, again, I like to point out that, evil America literally keeps hundreds of millions of people alive in the world. I know there's also a thing in the Congo where, like, people couldn't walk 5 miles to get medicine because America stopped giving trucks and things. We're paying Lesotho, we're paying Argentina. Boy, what's great? It's great that America's just the world's pay pig and everybody comes, to us with their hands out begging for money from us. Then we give them the money, and then they spit in our faces and tell us how evil and stupid we are. Boy, it's great. It's just, it's wonderful. And not even in, like, poor countries either. U.S. aid stopped funding. And then all of a sudden, Canada just mysteriously stops building highways. Australia stops funding its universities. Why are we funding Canada's highway construction? Alpha Marigi says, I had a who's on first situation with my older brother's friend. Asked him what game Captain Commando is from when I was 13. Pointhor says, I think Battleshock is one of the most underrated beat-em-ups. Boy, there's a lot of really cool video game characters that nobody cares about anymore. Maybe the kids will care about them if we put them in Fortnite. I say as I try to restrain the vomit coming out of my mouth. Oh, fun fact, Lesotho literally has been begging South Africa to annex them. And boy, you got some problems when you're begging Pretoria to annex you. Okay, let's see what else we got going on. Oh, how can I forget to mention that when I remember back when I was talking about the Mike Huckabee thing, in my email, Huckabee automatically corrected to Huckster, which I think is pretty fitting. Let's see, what else do we have? Got a couple more things. Got 3 more things to deal with. Okay. In popular culture, fast food restaurant Arby's is being sued for false advertising. The lawsuit alleges that the ads make the sandwiches have 100% more meat than they do in reality. It makes the meat look like medium rare roast beef when it's actually well done cooked. Arby's tried to dismiss the case and they lost, so they're going to court. I mean, I've never eaten at Arby's, so I can't pretend like I know what it tastes like. I haven't heard good things, to be honest. So, but yeah, I mean, false advertising is false advertising. It looks like crap. From the pictures I see, the Arby's, like the real Arby's I've seen, looks like absolute hot garbage. It's probably not even that hot. It's probably lukewarm garbage, considering like most fast food restaurants just sits under a heat lamp all day. But yeah, I like this. I'm not a fan of marketing. I think that we should sue more companies and countries, but for false advertising. I think it's somewhat sad to say that literally the only thing I know about Arby's is jokes made at the expense of Arby's on The Simpsons. Okay. See what else we got going on here. Pornography says they will put Mess and Mustafa on Fortnite. I don't know who those people are. Ian Kempster says you're not missing anything with regards to Arby's. Ponythroat says, when I was in Birmingham, I went to go to Five Guys. Another guy said we should go to McDonald's because he works there, and he refused to step foot in any other burger place. One would think that working at McDonald's would make you less inclined to eat McDonald's. Like, I used to work at Amazon, and I refuse to buy anything from Amazon unless I'm incapable of finding it anywhere else. Tony Gilbert says they've been trying to sue Arby's for years. Robert Diaz says they got sued over Wagyu beef ads. Tony Gilbert says the 2 Arby's by me failed, so... I don't know if there is an Arby's near me. I mean, I like Five Guys personally if I have to eat fast food. Okay, I think, see what we have. Okay, so, speaking of Birmingham, England, let's go to London. London had a sumo exhibition. So the Telegraph decided to post an article saying, bring back World of Sport. Bring back Big Daddy and Co. It was more panto than sport, but watching large-bellied, lycra-clad, British gammons grapple was prime Saturday afternoon TV. Hey, I mean, who doesn't like World of Sport? I think you're going to have some problems bringing back Big Daddy Crabtree. To paraphrase The Simpsons, I keep telling you, he's 95 years old, and he's dead. But I think there is still like this is obviously some boomer nostalgia slop, but there is a fairly strong professional wrestling scene in the UK. If all the hack-ass YouTubers are any indication. So I think British wrestling is going to be just fine. Apparently, to this day, you bring up wrestling to an elderly Brit, and they'll talk about, Big Daddy Crabtree, Giant Haystacks, and Kendo Nagasaki. I remember there was an OSW video where they were like, Giant Haystacks had a very brief run in WCW in the 90s when he was like in his late 50s and dying of cancer. And they were watching it, like the OSW guys are Irish, and they were like, this is absolute shit. Like you talk to old people, they're always like, oh man, you talk about wrestling, they're like, oh man, that Giant Haystacks. Like, it sucks. It fucking sucks. Somebody in the thread says it best. There was a massive disconnect between what British wrestling was and what non-Brits think wrestling was. And that can be illustrated by the fact that Johnny Saint is in the WON Hall of Fame, but Big Daddy isn't. The Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame. Well, I mean, Johnny Saint is a wiry and trim technical wrestler, and obviously Dave Meltzer gets massive hard-ons for that. Big Daddy, not so much. Somebody asks, what was Big Daddy's appeal? I assume it was his personality and charisma because he was awful in the ring. And from what I gather, Big Daddy had the same appeal that, like, Dusty Rhodes had, except not quite as talented. Just a jovial fat man who kind of fought for the working man. And, fair enough. I'm not going to say, as an American boy in the 90s, I'm not going to say I was widely exposed to, WOS wrestling in the 60s. I will say, however, that actually, for some insane reason, I use a picture of Big Daddy Crabtree in one of my PowerPoints in class when I talk about British imperialism. So essentially, I talk about, like the whole white man's burden thing, and then I'll say, but that didn't appeal to the average, working class stiff in the UK, and then I'll cut to a slide showing various, like, round-headed, beef-eating, English blockheads. It's just a collage of, like, Big Daddy Crabtree, Andy Capp, Billy Butcher, Jason Statham, etc. I'm like, do you think any of these guys give a shit about, civilizing the heathen? Probably not. Okay. Tony Gilbert said something about Big Daddy, but it got cut off. But yeah, I can understand the appeal personally. Bring back big fat, plowman's lunch eating lads grappling each other at the Royal Albert Hall. Yeah. And finally, the third Tron movie, Tron Ares, earned $14 million in the opening day, lower than Morbius. Both films star Jared Leto. Can we agree that Jared Leto is in fact, like, franchise cancer at this point? He failed to morb out of Tron, and it just went down the crapper. As I said, I've never even seen the first Tron, so I can't pretend like I know that much about what it's about. But, yeah, Jared Leto kills yet another franchise. And if that wasn't enough, he's going to be... They're making a new Masters of the Universe movie, and he's playing Skeletor. Because when I think of a charismatic supervillain, I think of a charismaless block of wood, pretentious douchebag who meditates in the desert. Some people theorize that Disney does not care about Tron, as evidenced by the fact that they did nothing with it for 20 years until they put a Tron level in Kingdom Hearts. Anyway, this person thinks that they might be doing this on purpose to kill the franchise by casting Jared Leto in it. I don't have proof, but it's possible. I'm genuinely starting to think, like, are there movies with Jared Leto in them that I like? I mean, he's been in movies that I like Fight Club and American Psycho, but I didn't really see those movies for him. And as I mentioned before, very long ago, I used to work... Wait, no, I'm sorry. I used to go out with a girl who worked at Amazon Studios as like a... she was like backstage. She was like a gopher. She got people coffee, basically. And she basically said that she met Jared Leto and he was a pretentious douchebag. So you can interpret that as you will. She informed me that Jared Leto does, in fact, morb all over the place. Hey, Tony Gilbert says Big Daddy was so big he had his own gravity. Yes, he was a very large man. Alpha Riga says, let's bring back Orson Welles. Kids want to hear the original Unicron. Well, I mean, Orson Welles has an AI, like, thing that recreates his voice, so they could do AI Unicron. Okay. Okay, so Tony Gilbert clarifies that the UK was a big wrestling market, and Big Daddy was sort of like a jovial, fat schlub, much like Dusty Rhodes. Alpha Rodriguez says, Plowman's Lunch, is that a pre-made frozen meal? No, it's Plowman's Lunch is basically a big piece of, like, you know, Wesleyan cheese and on bread, and there's like some pickles and stuff. It's very much like it's literally a lunch for like peasants working the land. Tony Gilbert says Leto has a cult. Fuck that guy. Tony Gilbert also says he's not happy about the Skeletor thing. Tony Gilbert says there's not a single movie where he was the lead man that was good. I'd rather watch Gary Busey. Hey, Gary Busey was great. I mean, he at least has an excuse for being insane. He was in a pretty severe car accident that, like, messed up his brain. Alfred says it's Morbing time. Came from a Montenegrin Yu-Gi-Oh YouTuber. Oh, good to know. Ponethor says Jared Leto should method act into being a skeleton, really get into character. Well, the thing about Skeletor is he's, like, really ripped and buff, except for his skeleton face. So Jared Leto wouldn't have to starve himself. He just has to, like, throw powerful asses into his face and melt his flesh off while also hitting the gym. Yeah, I don't think Jared Leto's Skeletor is going to be half as good as Frank Langella's Skeletor. And, yeah, that about does it for my prepared remarks. You can say your last pieces now, should you desire. Tony Gilbert says he's the reason for the national helmet law. Yes. Anybody remember that Comedy Central had that, like, the Life with Busey show? It was like a spoof reality show where some guy just lives with Gary Busey for like a year. I actually like that show. I don't know why they canceled it. Alfred says, did you talk about the death of the Dead or Alive lead designer? No, I didn't. I had no idea that happened. Ponythroat says, Skeletor in the first He-Man was channeling John McCain in his performance. Yes, very much so. It's actually funny that Frank Langella literally still to this day says that Skeletor is his favorite role he ever played. He just had so much fun with it. Tony Gilbert says, I remember that show. He had a good judge show, too. I did not know Gary Busey had a judge show. I'll look that up. Okay, you can say your last pieces now, should you desire. Okay, Alpha Marigis says that the Dead or Alive lead designer, his top 5 favorite games were Chibi Robo, Dragon Quest II, Image Fight, Ocarina of Time, and Pikmin. Good choices. And his top 5 least favorite games were some Tekkens. I see. All right, so for Larsen Halleck, this has been Larsen Halleck. All of you have a good day.